Come, Japan.
Welcome to another edition of Why Come Japan. I'm your host, Mr. Radrey, where I interview creatives on the show. And today on my show is author Justin Isis. And I have some of his books here to help put on display. Author of I Wonder What Human Flesh Tastes Like, Arms Race. And most recently, that just came out a couple of weeks ago. Is that right, Justin?
Yeah, it's pretty much just like a month. I mean, it's pretty recent.
Pleasant Tales 2. So give me like kind of a basic timeline of like the Justin Isis brand, if you don't mind me.
What's that?
I hope you don't mind me using that moniker, but give me kind of a timeline of like the Justin Isis brand. Like the first book.
What's that? Fuck capitalism. Sorry, what was that?
All right. Okay. All right. I'll reword this. All right. So when you wrote your first book, what was your first book exactly? It was
Human Flesh was the first.
that was the first. Okay. That came out in 2011. Okay. Then the Arms Race came out in 2015. So yeah, accompanied with this book, you sent me a bunch of websites kind of setting up the Arms Race, right? This book in particular. Do you think like written works should have...
Did I send you did I just send you the press page or the company page? Or I actually don't remember which ones.
Let me look here. I got to check now. Okay, so I'm looking at it now. The websites you sent me, there's like a blog website here for the Neo-Decadence Present, Drowning in Beauty, Neo-Decadence Day. Because I mean, I'm reading this here. I should probably put this in the show notes because it's awful for an audio show talking about something nobody can see.
You could probably have it like pop up or something, right?
Yeah, I'll just throw that in there. You wrote the second manifesto of the Neo-Decadence, published Tuesday, January 10th, 2017. And this seems kind of like a list of rules. Can I call it that?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, that's generally what manifestos are. I mean, they're sort of like I guess you could say like parameters or like axioms or something to kind of establish what you're setting out to do.
This kind of really reminded me of Dog Me 95. Do you know what that is?
Yeah. It's the was it Von Trier, right?
Yeah, it's Von Trier, which nobody really talks about anymore. Probably because those rules are next to impossible.
Well, I think he was
follow.
I think he was just doing it for a very specific period of time. Like, I don't really know much about his films, but I get the impression that he was just doing that for like a certain period of time. I'm not super clear with the background behind it, but I think that or at least my take on it is that it was only for a certain period of time that he was, and a certain group of people, I guess, maybe collaborators or whoever signed on to do that, they would then, use those parameters with whatever they were making. So I guess the idea is kind of similar with Neo-Decadence. It's not saying that we have to do that for everything we write, but at least for that project, I mean, we're trying to establish certain kind of like shared parameters or kind of axioms, I guess you could say.
Do you think there's like a certain kind of beauty in terms of like following this a set structure that you set up for yourself, like a limitation in a way?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I guess you could look at it as like constraints, or I feel like with writing and maybe with filmmaking too, like people often do work better or come up with more like surprising things if they do have some kind of like limitation or some kind of like set parameters in advance or constraints, I guess you could say.
This manifesto, does this go for all your stories or just basically the Arms Race?
I would probably apply it to most of my writing. I mean, obviously there's some things that kind of fall outside of it, but I would probably say it applies to like most of my fiction that I've done.
Like a lot of these stories that I've read, like I mentioned before how Arms Race and I Wonder What Human Flesh Tastes Like, and even Pleasant Tales, that they're kind of these great kind of compilations of just short stories. Are you against the idea of how stories are supposed to be structured to fit in like the more typical form of what makes a novel?
I don't really see there's any limitations on it. I do generally think in terms of top-down structures, you could say, or maybe like overarching structures. So I usually have a fairly clear idea of like how something is going to be structured before I write it. I mean, I guess like there's maybe I guess some people just kind of like sit down and, type out whatever, and they just kind of let it naturally take shape. But I usually start with a fairly predetermined structure and then kind of just flesh it out or like fill it out from there.
What is that predetermined structure?
It's usually always different. I mean, I usually try to just change it for everything. I don't really like to like repeat myself that much. So I also get bored very easily. So if I feel like I've like successfully or done something, I'll usually try to like break it or change it next time so I don't repeat.
Yeah, no, I guess that's smart. I mean, you don't want to get stuck doing the same thing over and over again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess some people are comfortable with that, and some people basically just do that more or less all the time. But I do tend to get bored pretty quickly, and I want to try to like switch it up or try something I haven't done before.
Yeah, definitely. So like I've read David Lynch's book called Catching the Big Fish. Ugh, can't enunciate. Have you ever heard of it before?
No, is it like his memoir or is it?
Yeah, I guess you could, not really a memoir. It's kind of an autobiography, and it's all kind of written in these small vignettes. I mean, I could load it to you if you
Right,
really
right.
want it. And he talks about where his ideas come from. And he also talks about how his ideas, a lot of them come from his meditation sessions. Where would you say your ideas generally come from? Because, I mean, reading these books, I mean, you definitely have ideas.
I do try to like consume a fair amount of media. I mean, I read like I do read a lot and try to keep up with things. So I feel like I'm usually just at some level like sort of like reacting to things I'm reading. Like I usually get most of my ideas from um or at least a lot of them from just from reading other books. So there's a certain element of that. And kind of like we were just talking about with the structures, I mean, a lot of the time I'll read something and I'll kind of be aware of the way it's structured, the way it's written, and I'll think, well, like, what if you changed this a certain way, or like, what if you kind of like fucked it up or did something different with it? So certainly, like consuming a lot of content is one way to get ideas I would recommend. I think the way to start is just steal them basically. Like go on. Are you familiar with like Project Gutenberg? Do you know what that is?
Sounds familiar. Refresh my memory.
Well, it's sort of like Google Books before Google Books. So
Okay.
it's sort of like a repository of, if I remember right, like exclusively public domain books. So basically just books that are no longer copyrighted. So you can just go on there and read them for free, or sample them for free. You can basically do whatever you want with them, right?
Right, right.
And I think the book you were just holding up earlier, Pleasant Tales, like a lot of the stories in that actually did begin with just like sampling texts, like cutting out about like 60% of a story and then just changing it, or fucking around with it until it was more interesting. So I would say like plagiarism is your friend, basically. Like just steal things, sample them if you can. If you're running out of ideas, you can usually get something interesting by just changing something that probably no one was really doing that much with anyway. So.
Right. Okay, I gotta ask, because I was reading this book all today, and there are certain points of that just had me laughing out loud. And I'm like wondering, was Justice supposed trying to be funny here, or is he trying to be serious? I'm guessing it was probably to be facetious. Am I right?
Which ones are you talking about?
Pleasant Tales too.
Which stories?
Uh, let me dive in here. There's a lot of short stories and short stories. There's several of them. Like I just started laughing. Like people are looking at me like, why is he laughing at a book? You're not supposed to laugh at books. What the fuck? But anyway,
You're not like I thought you were. I don't know.
yeah, right. A Walk in the Park.
Right.
And what was the other one? There's a couple of others here. They told me to stop whoring myself and eat more steak. And there was another one here. The Italian reality, somewhat The one about the paper boy.
Not super important.
Yes.
Raining Dead.
Wait, is that the name of the story? Not super
That's the name of
important.
the story is Not Super Important. Raining Dead.
Oh, it is. Yeah, not super important. Raining Dead.
That
And
one's actually built on a sample of a fairly well known short story by writer
really?
Carson McCullers. So I was reading her story and I thought, well, this is kind of boring. So I literally just copied it into an open Word document and just started like changing it.
Interesting.
And I kept coming back to it for maybe like 5 to 10 years, and I would just change something every now and then when I remembered it. So I think I started that in like 2007 or something, and then just finished it for this book.
Like another one I really liked was the semicolon one, the unsaleable value of human dignity.
Right.
Where it's all just one sentence.
Yeah.
It's all one sentence, right?
Yeah, it's more or less. I mean, it's sort of structured into paragraphs, but it's basically just in one sentence.
I don't know. I thought it was great. I mean, particularly, going back to one of the first stories in the book, A Walk in the Park, where I guess I don't want to spoil it, but
I don't really believe in spoilers. Just
all right, or like it goes from like a walk in the park to indulgence in self-help and self-improvement to LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, I think with that one, I would usually like write down phrases that I would hear. Like I would hear some kind of phrase like, like toxic masculinity or something. And then I would just think, well, like, how could I like write, I wanted to use these phrases in like unusual kind of ways. So that story was just one idea I came up with. Like I wanted to, talk about LinkedIn a lot because I've always been kind of like horrified by LinkedIn. I just think it's a very like sinister.
Oh, it totally is.
Kind of idea. So I knew that like it was. I usually end up writing about things that I'm kind of like troubled by or I consider kind of like sinister or something. So I definitely knew that I wanted to have a story that was just like 20 pages of just LinkedIn basically. So that's kind of how I ended up structuring that. Was like I wanted to have something that could build up to this like kind of like orgasmic LinkedIn climax of how to get to better a profile that recruiters will notice and good facial angles for your profile picture and everything.
It really was fucking funny. I mean, I was bawling in laughter. It was hilarious.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah.
There was like one. What's the part? I mean, in that book, they talk about LinkedIn. Well, what is it? Supposedly, I've heard somewhere that LinkedIn itself, the website, they have like some sinister thing that they do is that like when they get one person's email, they don't ask the permission for other people to like send your LinkedIn information to other people. They don't even ask. They just send it to everybody.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think we're kind of living in this like kind of post privacy age. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I spend a lot of time in the spam folder of my email too, because there's a lot of good ideas. I think it was actually Brendan Connell who said like the best ideas for fiction come from the spam folder. And it's just like there's a lot in there. I mean, there's like extraterrestrial Viagra from Thailand, and you got weight loss plans, and there's a lot of stuff there. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I do get a lot of like spam email, so I think there's probably something to be said for that. Maybe it's from LinkedIn,
right? Because I was reading Walk in the Park. And reading that, and I was thinking, what is this viral marketing Justin's trying to do here? It's like it all read like, is there so many name drops? It just felt like reading my spam folder. So now I get it now.
I spend a lot of time on Facebook. I mean, I usually tend to like write down phrases and kind of ideas or something. So, anytime I would hear someone use like a phrase that kind of like stood out to me, I would usually think, well, how can I work this in or use this somehow.
I saw a news article not too long ago that there's like some school shooting happening. I can't remember. I think it was like the recent one that happened in Florida.
Right.
And they had some article. It's like, what kind of viral marketing is this? It's like they have in all caps, he went to Subway and then he got his guns at Dick's Sporting Goods. And
yeah.
Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. I'm actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. I mean, one of the things I'm actually thinking about doing in an upcoming story or book is this kind of idea of like school shooter culture, where it kind of is like, instead of joining the, I don't know, photography club or whatever, you're going to join the school shooter club, right? Because there's this kind of like established, cultural narrative where, if you want to get attention and if you want to, participate in this, this kind of scene, it's like a real thing you can do. Like you just shoot up the school and then you've got a name for yourself. Basically, you're gonna get, lots of attention, lots of headlines. So, yeah, I definitely see it. I mean, why not Subway? Dick's Sporting Goods. Unloading weapons on children. I mean, it just seems like it's kind of part of the same. I don't know what you would call it, but like complex maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, reading that story made me feel like I was doing crack cocaine, but like the good crack cocaine, not like the one where you get addicted to it and like you can't stop. I mean, like one where like, whoa, geez, that's like too much at one moment. Like I could handle it, but I mean, it's just like so much in my face at like once.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
one page.
you could look at it as like, I guess like Pleasant Tales too is sort of like the crack version of Arms Race or something. Like it's a lot shorter. All the stories are really short, but they're sort of like, I feel like it's not super different, but it's sort of a more compressed or like crack form maybe.
Daniel Hardy asks, will there be a Sordid Tales?
Sordid Tales?
What's that?
No, certainly not. We're just gonna keep things pleasant. I don't think anyone would want to read a book that is too like sordid or upsetting or
What's Sordid Tales? Is that like an anthology or a book you're writing? Or?
Presumably it would be a book of sordid or less than truth or decent fiction. So I don't think anyone would be interested in reading that. So there would probably be more. Well, there would definitely be more pleasant tales.
All right, so I did some digging on Amazon to try to find a good oeuvre, if that's the word. Is that the word, oeuvre?
Yeah.
Of all your work, and I noticed that you did one book on poetry.
Oh, it's a poetry collection.
All right. I mean, like as an adult, I mean, I've come to appreciate poetry, more as kind of like cryptic storytelling because I'm really into that. But like as a kid, I hated poetry and I never understood why people liked it. Do you think that like you could contextualize why poetry should be taught to kids and why it should be a staple of literature?
I don't know if it should be taught to kids.
Why do you say that? They can't handle it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know what should be taught to kids. I mean, I don't feel like my education was particularly useful or good in any way. So I really don't know if I don't know if it should be taught to kids or not. I don't know. I'm wondering like do you remember like what specific poetry you thought was boring? Because if it's like W.H. Auden or something, I mean, I probably think it's boring too.
K-Ninja asks in the chat, what should be taught to adults?
What should be taught to adults?
I think he's joking.
Self-defense. I don't know. Basic financial. I don't know. I don't feel like I learned anything really super useful in school.
Yeah, and just how to sit down. That's basically it.
Sit down and daydream. I mean, that's about it.
Not get in trouble.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
I haven't been paying attention. Let me check the chat here. Anyone's asking? But yeah,
not really.
What's this poetry that you objected to? Because
I never really objected.
I object to a lot of poetry myself. So
I've never really quite objected to it. It's just gotten to the point where it's just like I could never really appreciate it like the way a quote unquote textbook appreciated it, or like maybe one of my friends appreciated it. And like, I don't get it. You know, I mean, I understand the philosophy of sort of saying potato, potato, you know, one person likes this because they identify with it. Right. It wasn't until like I got more into cryptic storytelling where they give you such little information to figure out a story, and you're just constantly thinking about it all day. Like, who is he? Who's he referring to when he uses the word he? Like, for example, in a poem. Whereas, like, if I read something like Robert Frost, I'm bored, you know?
Well, I mean, like, I feel like Robert Frost is pretty boring. I mean, I don't think Robert Frost should be exposed to children. I don't know. I personally don't really see the point either. I mean, but there are a lot of poets that I keep coming back to, and that I never really feel like I fully like get how they did it. You know, I could say like Wallace Stevens, Ezra Pound, Yeats, Nina Loy. Like there's a lot of poets that I usually come back to and kind of obsessively cycle through. I'm not super. I guess like I'm not super interested in the storytelling aspects. I mean, even with writing stories, I don't feel like I'm not really like super compelled by storytelling per se. I mean, I usually just think of it's like a frame to do other weird, interesting things with. I guess poetry. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you define it, but I would say like we're basically swamped in poetry every day. I mean, Donald Trump is poetry.
For somebody.
Weird. There's actually an interesting video that analyzes the rhetorical strategies of how he talks. You know.
Oh right.
So I think to a large extent, like our everyday lives are actually kind of constructed or maybe like mediated by things that I would consider a kind of poetry. You know, it's like if you're and you know like even to the extent of, you know, governments, or if the government is trying to get rid of a troublesome group, you know, are they going to commit genocide or, you know, perform ethnic cleansing? Or, you know, if you're in Japan, are you an immigrant or an expatriate or a cultural ambassador? You know, right? So I feel like I think poetry starts with just paying close attention to language, and probably the closer attention you pay to it, the closer you're going to be to winding up in a place where you would be reading and writing poetry. But I certainly don't think it. I don't think it should be something that's like off in some, you know, academic school context or something. I mean, all you have to do is, you know, like this spam folder in your mail. Like you could do it. You could look at that as poetry. You know, you could look at Facebook as being poetry.
So you're saying it's pretty subjective.
Well, I'm saying it's more. I think the context in which we think about it is just like weird, boring, rhyming thing that we're supposed to like analyze or something. I mean, I don't really see that as particularly. I don't really think that should be taught to children, because I mean, you know, if it's not, you know, just let them. Well, like look at. I mean, the most popular music, you know, hip hop for the past 30 years is poetry, right? So I don't really see it as being separate from these things around us every day. And I think the reason to kind of be interested in or pay attention to it is if you're not paying close attention to the language that's going on around you, it's probably going to slip past you. And I'm kind of suspicious of a lot of the language that gets used, because if you let people slip language past you without really looking at it, then you probably are going to eventually just be like, oh yeah, it was just just a spot of ethnic cleansing going on over there, or you know, so you know, there's ways that get language gets put to use that I do think we should be kind of suspicious of, you know. And as to why you would want to write it, I mean, well, I just think like, why wouldn't you want to use it in more interesting ways than it's being used?
Interesting comment here from the chat. Ramon Alice. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name right.
Ramon. Yeah, this is Ramon. Yeah.
Oh, you're a friend of yours.
Ramon, what's up? I'm actually gonna get help from him. I'm trying to write a story that has a lot of Spanish in it, and I need his help to do some Spanish dialogue.
Well, he's saying something here. There's something called Pomoji, called poetry made with emoji only. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, that's basically like hieroglyphics, right? I mean, that's what the Egyptians.
I guess so.
That's what the Egyptians were doing. I mean, that's where language kind of started. Is glyphs or hieroglyphs, I guess you could say.
All right, I guess that makes sense. So basically, what I understand from this is like my takeaway from this is poetry is more just about language in terms of, like, it doesn't even really need to follow a structure. But my idea anyway about why poetry is taught in class is to be cryptic as fucking hell and like saying, listen to your goddamn teacher.
Yeah, well, I agree that people shouldn't stand for that, or I don't really see the point of that either. But the funny thing is that the same kids that are maybe sleeping through that class on Robert Frost or W.H. Auden or whatever will go out and then listen to hip hop, which is kind of the same thing. Or at least I don't really see it as being any different. So I would say it's not really a difference of type. It's more like a difference of just quality. It's not. I don't think people should have to really pay undue attention to poetry that is maybe super remote from them in time and place, or again, unless it actually does appeal to them or interest them. I do read a lot of poetry that's pretty old, but I like to read recent stuff or recent music too.
No, right. Yeah, I totally get that. All right, so I haven't been ignoring the chat.
I certainly wouldn't want to teach it to kids. I would just end up writing it with them. I would just be like, well, let's just write a poem now. Or I wouldn't sit around trying to get them to analyze meter or metrical feet or whatever.
Well, the way I've kind of taught, because I'm a teacher, and the way I've taught poetry is, imagine you take a story and you got that story and you ripped all the pages out of the book. And then I said, here you go, figure it out. Go.
Yeah, well,
that's how I got to figure. I mean, sometimes it can be fun. Sometimes.
I think there's some truth to that. I mean, it's certainly, I think poetry is certainly quite radically compressed, or you could say maybe condensed language. Someone is talking shit about W.H. Auden in the chat here. So yeah, nice. Is this Simon? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why anyone likes Auden. It's just I don't get it. Someone was asking about post-naturalism too. That's good. I'm trying to.
What's post-naturalism?
Post-naturalism is kind of I guess you could call it neo-decadence as well, and that's kind of the sort of like the parameters that were outlined in those manifestos we were talking about earlier. So that's kind of what I would describe my writing style as.
You describe your writing style as post-naturalist.
Yeah. But that has kind of like a technical literary sense of because there was an earlier movement called naturalism, but we don't have to worry about that too much.
All right.
I'm just
okay. So I could say post-naturalist author Justin Isis with us right now.
Yeah, you could say that.
Great. I love having monikers. Extra monikers, the better. All right. So I didn't mean to skip over this person's comment. I don't. This person asked a question. Snowfield Rhapsody asks.
Oh, that's my friend James. James, what's up? Yeah, okay, I'm up to him too. He says, "What's
the truth of the universe you've realized through writing that you wish you could convey to your audience in your books and/or general existence?" Wow, that's a thinker.
I would say like it's made me look at language and realize how much of our everyday lives are basically constructed through language. And I know that's kind of a like glib kind of I don't know what you would call it, truism or something, but it really is the case. I mean, I don't think I was even really thinking properly about language until I did finish quite a few books before I started publishing them, but I didn't really, probably even up through Human Flesh, I wasn't really, I guess, digging down to the level of language or just noticing things around me. Yeah, that's probably the one thing I would say, which I guess kind of ties with what we were saying about poetry there.
Ramy Michaels asks, Justin's. Which book are you the most proud of? The newest one? I like the newest one a lot.
Newest one? Really? Yeah, I would probably Arms Race is the best one. I mean, I'm not super like happy with any of them, but I think Arms Race is probably the one I would just like throw at someone if they're asking for one of them. But I do think reasonably satisfied with Pleasant Tales 2. But I'm not super satisfied with anything I've published to date. I mean, I'm more interested in the things I'm going to put out maybe from now on.
All I can say is Pleasant Tales 2 gets my thumbs up for recommendation.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad it got through.
So answer another question here. Ramon Alas asks.
Yeah, Ramon. Yeah.
One question for later. Any chance of another collab with Quentin or Brendan? Different as they all are. 3 styles overlap perfectly in Cutest Girl.
Yeah, no, we're always we're kind of like a 3-man band or something. So I think Quentin is actually working on Pleasant Tales 3 right now, and we do have other ideas for upcoming books and things. We'd originally planned to do something, not really a sequel to Girl, but maybe set in the same universe as it. But we've just been really busy, so we haven't had a chance to actually like sit down and do it. But yeah, there's certainly we do have a lot of things we want to do together. More anthologies, more collaborative novels. So it sort of is like a 3-man band or something. I guess you could say.
Would you ever consider writing a children's book?
Pleasant Tales 2, I would say, is basically
Pleasant Tales 2, where like they fucking try to kill a dog.
But they don't. They're shown the error.
Yeah, that's true. They don't kill the dog. That's right.
Contains a very positive moral about not sawing dogs or killing dogs. So
there's a lot of
Pleasant Tales 2. I would definitely consider a young adult or kind of children's book.
Interesting. Well, because I was thinking I'd really like to write a children's book where all of the pages don't match any of the words.
Yeah.
So it's like, because I've taught kids before, and it's like I get tired of them like just looking at the pictures, like figure out the story. I'm like, no, you got to appreciate the words, you know. And I was thinking maybe I should just make a book where like the words are just so offensive and so horrible, but you're looking at the pictures, and it's like sunshine and butterflies or something, or maybe the opposite.
Yeah. Well, you could have some kind of juxtaposition like that. That's the kind of thing that interests me about, we could say like graphic novels or comics or, I guess even manga, is having some kind of disjunction between the images and the words.
Yeah, indeed. Like another friend of mine, he made another book called, I can't remember the exact name, but it was called Mr. Tanaka versus Japan, or like Ken Tanaka versus Japan or something. Not Ken Tanaka, help me find parents, different, just a made-up character named Ken Tanaka, kind of this Michael Douglas falling down type here in Japan. And it started off as something really tiny. Like there's this big, tall, angry Japanese man who's on the verge of like, you know, losing it, and who's right next to like Tokyo Tower, like juxtaposed. And it's a very simple drawing. But further into the story, it gets even more and more and more detailed. Like, and it just gets bigger and like more explanations, bigger like drawings, all this extra stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's another way you could take it.
Yeah.
One is saying Brendan Connell did Unpleasant Tales already. That's sort of where Pleasant Tales originally came from. I was talking to Brendan. I said, "Why are you writing these unpleasant books? You know, you should be appealing to more of a juvenile audience, or should be writing more uplifting books." So I said, "Why don't you gotta do Pleasant Tales instead?" Because people probably don't want to read, unpleasant or sordid books. So that's kind of the genesis of the original Pleasant Tales.
All right. So a friend of the show, Chris Carlier, our friend, mutual friend, he told me that the movie Raw, the French horror film, is scarily close to like one of your stories in this book. I Wonder What Human Flesh Tastes Like.
Right.
Which story are you talking about?
I think he's referring to the one, like the title story.
Which I mean, because you repeat the story like 3 times in here. You have, I wonder what human flesh tastes like, eggshell, unauthorized book cover.
Yeah.
And then you have, I wonder what human flesh tastes like, and then you have, I wonder what human flesh tastes like, etc.
Right.
Is it based on all of them, or one of them, or?
I haven't actually seen this film, so I'm kind of just talking out my ass here. But at least from what I've read about it, and it sounds like the idea of a female character who starts out as a vegetarian and then starts eating meat and eventually becomes interested in cannibalism. That's the idea behind the story in the book, and that seems to be quite close to the premise of the movie, at least from what I've read about it. I mean, again, I haven't seen the film, so it could be pretty different. But
okay, that's, I wonder what human flesh tastes like, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great story, by the way. I like that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you seen the film? Or?
I have not seen it.
Yeah.
Some people seem to really like it, so I guess I'll check it out.
I heard good things about it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not super bothered by it. I mean, it's, people are gonna eventually hit on some of the same ideas. I'm happy that I can say I got there first if it is similar. But other than that, I'm not super concerned with it.
All right. So going to your other book here, Welcome to the Arms Race. Welcome to the Arms Race. Excuse me. I'm not good on words. It's 11 o'clock, and I just got out of work, and I'm always tired by this point.
Need some Red Bull and coffee at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Over ice.
Yeah, particularly on a hot day like today. So I've been reading this book, and I've had the hardest time, I don't know, trying to figure out what certain stories are about. So I'd like to think I'm pretty sharp with understanding stories in general. I don't know, maybe I'm dyslexic or something, but I'd be lying if there was a bunch of stories here I just completely didn't understand.
Okay. Which ones do you think you didn't?
There's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but there's just so many of them I didn't what's going on?
Right.
So this being said, I'm not trying to, bash your work here or anything. My question is, as a joke, do you ever think you'd make cliff notes for some of your stories? And I guess for some context, I don't know if they have cliff notes for our international viewers. Cliff Notes used to be a series of books that kids, particularly young adults, would get about classic books that would explain all the meanings of the books, all the symbolism and everything.
Right. I don't know. I'm not really a super fan of explanations for things in the sense of it's kind of like we were talking about earlier with context, I guess. I'm usually more interested, or I guess you'd say compelled by things that I sort of don't fully understand. And a lot of the things that are a lot of the books, or we could say I guess just art in general, that I keep coming back to is usually it usually is the things where I don't feel like I completely grasp it, or I either don't understand how it was produced or how it was made, or I feel like I don't fully understand it, or there's always more to come back to. So I usually probably would resist trying to, I mean, I could break things down, I guess, but I don't think you really need to super get everything or feel like you do to appreciate it or to enjoy it.
Right. You don't want to be writing Da Vinci Code here or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was a child, or when I was younger and I was reading books, I would often read books that weren't meant for me. I would just pick up random books, or I would just take them off a shelf from somewhere, and I still kind of remember those experiences, because again I was getting something again that I didn't really have any context for, and I couldn't maybe really work out what it was about, and I certainly couldn't work out how the person who made it had made it. So I think when we become adults, there's maybe this expectation that we're grown-ups now, so we should we should understand every sentence of every book we read, or we should understand every scene of every movie we watch, right? And I think that's kind of I don't think I would agree with that. I think that is kind of a recipe for pretty boring books or pretty boring movies. Like, I don't think we should have to feel like we
have to have an explanation.
Have to have a complete explanation. I mean, I think there's, I think we always have some means of making sense of something, but there's always, or at least a lot of the time, there's going to be that missing components or missing context that I don't think we really need to appreciate it.
Okay, so you'd never like write one of your books. I write a cliff note for one of your books as a joke, even.
Maybe if I was getting paid or something, if someone offered to pay for it.
I mean, like for example, the 3 stories in I Wonder What Human Flesh Tastes Like. Like I was wondering, like, are these 3 stories with like the same theme, or is this Justin making fun of his other stories, but using the same theme?
I mean, I don't think there's any real deeper meaning. I mean, I just thought, well, like, why not just have 2 or 3 stories with the same title? I mean, I changed the titles a little bit, but I was originally just gonna have them have the exact same title.
I'm glad you changed it.
I might do that. I was thinking, I mean, there's another book I'm working on at the moment that's also like a story collection, and I was thinking of doing it with that, of just having multiple stories that just have the same title, and just for the hell of it. But I don't think there's any, at least with Human Flesh, I don't think there's any super thematic symbolism or whatever behind it. I mean, it just is what it is.
That's true. I mean, I got some stuff out of it. I mean, I imagine there's some like dramatic symbolism I could probably derive from it, but
well, sure, yeah.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna write some cliff notes on it, unless it's my own work and making fun of myself. Then I would definitely do it. Well, finally, I mean, since the show's called "Why Come Japan," I have to crowbar in, something about Japan here. This being said, what parts of Japanese culture in particular do you feel has a strong presence in your work?
Japanese culture. Well, I enjoy setting things in Japan and writing about Japan. And there's the third story collection, or the third. Well, I guess it'd be 4th now, but it's a collection I've been working on for a while, and it's also set kind of similar to Human Flesh. Like, it's also set entirely in Japan. I think there should be more. I feel like people writing about different countries is people who are not from a country usually come in with, I find, an interesting perspective on that country, and they're maybe going to notice things that people who grew up there didn't notice or don't notice as much. So I intend to keep writing stories set in Japan and keep setting things in Japan.
Okay, basically it's just kind of like it's easy to write about because it's right there.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of things that interest me about it. I mean, I am pretty interested in Japanese literature, or at least certain portions of it. I don't know if I would say all of it interests me, but certainly a lot of it does.
So I've been having a kind of back and forth here with a friend of the show, Raimi Michaels, and
is this in the chat? Is it? What's in
the chat?
What's happening in the chat here?
I had a little hard time understanding the context, but he says that he's talking about the scene, and I wonder what human flesh tastes like, the proper story.
Yeah.
Where a dog gets drowned on purpose by a chick in the toilet in the stall of a park restroom. And I was asking him for a little more context, and then he says, I stated the question, you're not interested in writing anything uncouth, but my question is, isn't that uncouth?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it is rather uncouth. I was also pretty young at the time, so I think we all, make mistakes in our youth and then hopefully become more couth over time.
Interesting. All right. I have one final thing before we separate for tonight. So I guess that's everybody's cue. If you want to go run to the comments section, write a question, now's the time.
Yeah, questions would be good.
But basically, I wanted to read one passage from I Wonder What Human Flesh Tastes Like, the proper story. Not etc. or eggshell book cover, unauthorized eggshell book cover. I couldn't find it. Shoot, hold on. I guess I got to find it here. Let me see if find it. But it was basically, it's saying something like, I was trying. The main character asks, he says, I was trying to come up with an ending for my novel. I wonder what human flesh tastes like. And he's having trouble coming up with an ending of it. And he eventually settles on that title, and then eventually he figures out how to end it, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I can't really. I think that's right. Yeah.
Which makes me want to ask: is part of this based on a true story?
Which one? Oh, the human flesh's story, or
yeah, the human. I wonder what human. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's why. I wonder what human flesh tastes like. The proper story.
No, I don't think that one was based on. I don't think that one was based on anything.
Because I got some real surrealist vibes from reading it.
Yeah,
like kind of this Kurt Vonnegut, like breaking universes kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I wouldn't say that one's super like autobiographical or based on anything that I experienced as much. Except maybe emotionally or something that I was feeling at the time. But some of the other stories in that book are more or less based on reality in certain ways. But I don't remember that one being super realistic.
All right, Justin, anything you want to say before we go?
Not really. I mean, not if there's any other questions or if that's it then.
This has been a live recording with me and Justin Isis, the author, naturalist, not postmodern. Wait, not postmodern. What was your handle again? Postnaturalist. Postnaturalist author Justin Isis, who currently resides.
I think we're over postmodernism now. We're in altermodernism.
Okay, alter-modernist writer. Well, I don't know.
Postmodernism's gone a bit dad at this point. I think.
Got a bit dad. Needs to turn a bit more dad. Mom.
I think it's gotten on a bit. So
you can find any of Justin's books in the chat below, or not the chat, the description below. If I'm forgetting anything, we talked about one of his blogs and how to understand his books. But you don't really need that. You should just go read it. He writes nice stories that are subversive and make you think. Make sure you, I don't know, punch the like button, do 10 sit-ups, tell your mom that she's beautiful. What are some call to action things, Justin, we should tell the audience?
Simon's saying, I'm a dad. Does that make me postmodern?
Sure, why not?
The answer is yes, it does. Having children makes you postmodern and makes you a grown up. So.
Did you ever see that Simpsons episode where they had Mo, and he goes, "Hey man, it's postmodern. It's Po-Mo."
Was that a recent Simpsons or
I don't know, man. I can't remember.
I don't think I've watched The Simpsons in like 25 years or something.
Yeah.
It feels like I haven't seen it in a tremendous amount of time. Is it still going?
It's still going. Yes, it really needs to die. It really does.
I would be honestly scared to watch it now. I think I wouldn't even know where to start with
no, it's awful. It's just simply awful. It's interesting to juxtapose old episodes with new episodes of The Simpsons. You learn something.
Because it's really pretty. It's pretty old now, right? I mean, we're watching it in like the 90s, the early 90s. Like it's pretty ancient stuff.
It's like watching Family Circus, man.
Yeah,
or not watching or reading Family Circus.
I would honestly be scared to watch.
It just ruins your fucking day. You're like, oh, why did I read that? All right, call to action, Justin. What should the people do at home?
What's this one?
Call to action. This is like at the end of the video. They say you're supposed to call to action.
We're supposed to call to action.
Yeah. What are you supposed to do? I mean, like smash the like button.
Smash the like button. Send some love into the universe. Stay couth.
Stay couth. There you go. I think we'll end on that. Stay couth.
Bye. buy my books.
That's a good message there. All right. Okay. Thanks, guys, for showing up. All right.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for being on the show, and I will, of course, see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.